Hello and welcome to the Hellbound Podcast. My name's Vicky.
I'm Alex.
And we are going to be dissecting Dahmer.
And what is Dissecting Dahmer, Vic?
We're talking about Dahmer, the serial killer, Jeffrey Dahmer.
Or specifically the show on Netflix.
Something. Really long title.
Yeah.
Do you remember what it's called?
Dahmer, a Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer Story.
Netflix.
Something like that. Netflix presentation.
Okay, so we've done episodes 1 to 4. Now we're talking about episode 5 and 6. Obviously, we're doing it in doubles.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Because otherwise, 10 weeks of this will kill anyone.
Oh, gosh. So we're going to talk about each episode individually, but there was a few things that I wanted to just mention about the whole production, and It's very high quality.
It is very high quality. It's a lot of the dramas from Netflix are like of the highest quality, really. But,
you know, I don't actually work in the industry. I don't really know much about it other than from a layman's terms. But the lighting, the way that it's... Is that the cinematography, would you say?
Yeah, the lighting, the cinematography, it's all kind of in synergy in one. But, yeah, there's got some skillful filmmakers here. Ryan Murphy's a brilliant producer as well, so... he's bringing probably a team of people he's worked with. I can't confirm that, but a lot of producers have directors and lighting crew and other producers in mind when they come together to produce something new.
It's just the caliber of the acting with very little dialogue at points was just incredible.
It's called a mise en scene.
Sorry?
So it's what you see on screen that tells the story, and it doesn't need dialogue.
I thought you were saying something in French. Mise en scene.
I did say something French. I went to film school.
I didn't. Right, so very good. Just wanted to get that, mentioned at the beginning, if that's okay. So
can I ask you?
Of course.
Because I'll pose some questions to you, Vic. What are the two episodes called?
So the first one, episode 5, is called Blood on Their Hands.
Yeah. Episode
6 is called Silenced.
Oh, just remembered what Silence is all about.
Yes.
Silenced, I know this is jumping ahead, I'm not going to say any details about it because we'll go back to episode 5. Silenced is the best episode in the series so far.
Ooh.
From my point of view.
So episode 5 opens with Jeffrey with his nan. Back in 1987, so we've gone back in time. You see him living with her at work. Again, very lonely. He sat there at work during some sort of break. I think he works in the evening, just on his own. Rifles through a newspaper, finds a funeral of a boy that he probably just thought, or a young man that he thought was attractive, and decides to go to the funeral. He's retelling the stories after he was captured of his life to the police officers, so the investigators.
Without those, not confessions, but without that storytelling from Dahmer to the police wouldn't have a clue about majority of people who he murdered. They wouldn't know the circumstances because there's, the remains are kind of obliterated in effect. But the one where he tells this story about the person he didn't even know and what he wanted to do to the body or be with the person, it was very, very strange, wasn't it?
It was just, I keep saying it was just really sad. Like, he basically wanted to attend a funeral of a beautiful stranger, he said.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
He wanted to dig his grave up and lie with the body.
Yeah, and the way that was done on screen were in layers.
Yeah.
It was like it
was like a dream sequence.
Yeah, when we saw it, I think we watched that twice, that sequence. But when we watched that, it was how he pictured lying with the body, how he pictured he was going to do it, because you see almost like layers in the dirt.
Yeah.
But then it shone reality. He basically couldn't get to the body
because the ground was frozen over.
Yeah.
He couldn't dig down.
And then he made the excuse. I'm not sure if this is in the tapes or this is just in the screenplay, but he tried to say that if he managed to get to the body and spend time with it, then he wouldn't have committed further crimes or murders.
Well, no, I don't know about that, but what he did say is he just wanted companionship. He wanted to watch a movie with someone.
Yeah, and it's become one of the biggest memes on the internet, watching a movie with someone now with Dahmer.
Is it really?
It really has. You know, the TV's got in his bedroom in the flat.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
So sad. The officer or the investigator, what should we call him, the policeman, was kind of implying that he was projecting a lot of his own thoughts and impressions of Dahmer's actions and behaviours, and he said, oh, it's just control, you wanted to control him. Jeffrey hadn't actually processed it for himself to think of it as control at that point. But the officer was projecting his thoughts and analysis onto him. The drinking is obviously a major part of everything and his actions and what he does. He's not of sound mind.
No, and he's drinking at such a young age as well, and in vast quantities at home alone was it's a huge factor in some of the motivations of what he did. Yeah,
it was really sad, really, the way that the police officer mentioned the name of the person, and he didn't even, it's Steve or Stephen, the first man that was killed, and he didn't even know his name, and that really annoyed the officer.
Yeah, because it was like something about not. There's something about There's something about not remembering that's like just so
insulting.
Awful. It's insulting. Yeah, absolutely.
And Jeffrey mentioned that he accidentally killed him, and found out that the second victim was also called Steve, and he went, oh, two Steves. Like, just...
Yeah, like he found some sort of correlation just because they got the same name.
He really is completely disassociated from his actions.
Yeah, he absolutely is.
And he's just fixated on companionship and, I suppose, owning someone's physical body.
Yeah. It was, it's quite hard to understand, isn't it? Do you think that I don't know how much you know about Dahmer or the murder itself or the tapes. Does it really kind of portray him accurately? Does that make sense, the show?
I don't think any of us would know. Like anything that's been written or said. He has done interviews, though, himself.
I guess that's the closest way you could understand who he is, by the recordings. That's the only way you can. I don't know if there's a psychologist involved at any point. Probably not.
What, in the making of this?
No, in his interviewing, or is it just police officers? Because a psychologist interviewing would have been like quite profound, I think, getting information from him.
I think when you've got somebody quite openly telling you their own story, and their story is a bit harrowing,
and that's
documented.
He's very open, isn't he?
YouTube videos, like there's loads of information out there. I think as a filmmaker or producing this or directing this, you can't deviate too far, because that's just silly. You'll be caught out on that. You've got artistic license, so things like, well, we've gone past the spoiler alert point, haven't we?
Yeah, you can.
There's a bit when one of the so-called victims walks into like an open field and is in a heady state. Like, you don't know that happened.
Well, we don't. That's it. Without us, without the viewer looking or checking back what was actually written, because that could be part of his original statement, because that's a survivor, isn't it, that chap?
Yeah.
So that could be true. It might just be completely artistic license. Like, there is a lot of artistic license taken with this show. But yeah, it's a very good continuation of the show itself. It's almost not as sinister, this episode, but it is in many ways.
Oh,
because
it is.
I think I'm not deadened to what he does and his character and who he is, but I've gotten used to watching him now. Well,
there's the actual killing parts. You saw him like killing and laying with 3 victims. That was glossed over a little bit. Like, the cellar is a big feature of this episode in his Nan's house, that Nan can't walk down the steps, so he's got free reign downstairs, but she can smell the smells.
And then the locked extra room and the taxidermy and
so in effect he's drinking more but he makes him feel more alone. He lives with his nan, so he doesn't have anyone that he actually interacts with. So he goes clubbing and goes to bars and then brings people back to his nan's house. He drugs them, strangles them in the cellar, as he said that he doesn't want them to suffer.
He strangles them after he drugs them.
Yeah, because he says he doesn't want them to suffer.
That's right, yeah.
But it's a known thing that it's very difficult to strangle somebody, like to kill someone by strangulation, and it's one of the most intimate forms of killing somebody that you can do.
Because it takes a long time.
Very early on, there was a lot of experimenting with the bodies, laying with the bodies afterwards, boiling the bodies, using acid. He actually told the detectives it became too easy. He ended up having like a shrine with bones that his nan found in his bedroom.
Yeah, and one of the big things about this particular piece of moments in the show or in his life was he was prone to mistakes or being obvious, caught because he's living with his grandmother. These crimes are happening in her house when she's not able to see what he's doing downstairs. And then, obviously this is kind of a very, very sinister moment, but he's learning on the job, so to speak.
Yeah, he is. He really opens up, doesn't he, in that interview about, he was asked, do you hear voices? Like, they were trying to make him like, a devil worshipper, so to speak.
Yeah,
like,
they wanted to plant a character. Yeah. They wanted it almost like tied up in a bow.
Yeah, so
his character,
he was like, no, I don't hear any voices. It was like, there didn't seem to be much premeditation other than an urge. He just said it was like easy access, wasn't it, really? The first one...
It became easier to...
because the first gentleman that we know of that got away, it wasn't somebody that he actually met in the club. So he didn't have that, buying drinks for them, getting to know them in that respect.
Mistakes, yeah.
So he was trying to take a break from things, wasn't he? And then he made a big mistake, which was the guy whose car wouldn't start.
That's right, yeah. The way it was depicted in the show, the guy that couldn't start his car, and he was almost like questioning. You could see he was
totally sober.
He was questioning the why is this guy helping me, random guy? So like you say, he's not meeting him in the club, and it's a big mistake, as Dahmer puts it.
Yeah, it was. And the guy was extremely suspicious from first meeting him.
Yeah.
But he needed help, and he was promised, I'll give you a lift, sort of thing. So you go with somebody. If you're stranded somewhere in the middle of the night, that's what you do.
Yeah.
Well, it was a different time back then as well.
Absolutely.
So he brought him back to his nan's house. He was totally sober. And then Jeff was like, I'm just going to go and find my keys, opens the fridge and opens a can. And you're like, the guy's like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah. He's not going straight to...
He's not going to find keys. He's not doing any of that.
Yeah, it's the questions it straight away.
I'm trying to be hospitable,
Yeah.
And then Nan woke up. Nan came down.
Yeah, and he had his hands around his throat whilst the Nan came down, and then he just separated.
Well, in effect, Nan saved him.
Yeah, Nan saved him.
She knew what he was doing, but was so suspicious.
Yeah.
And was frightened for this lad.
Yeah, absolutely.
There is that the race permeates throughout the whole thing, doesn't it, really?
What do you mean?
So the guy was black, the guy that got away.
A lot of his victims were black, yeah.
But this particular one, Nan was like, why have you brought a black man into my house? But actually was more concerned about him and worried about him, and still didn't want, was like, you need to take him to hospital, he's not right.
Yeah, and she wanted to stay up with him, yeah.
Yeah, so, her decency, humanity overtook any sort of racist issues.
Yeah, there's no excuse for it, though, yeah.
There isn't an excuse for it, but it was different times, and it permeated through it all.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And especially when that particular victim or survivor goes to the police station, he's basically ignored. They go to question Jeffrey, but he's basically ignored, really.
Yes, it was horrible.
So it is a very good reflection of the times. It's not good, but it's a reflection of the times and how people of colour still treated to this day.
Yeah, it was really, really not good. So basically, he got away with that, didn't he?
Absolutely, yeah.
But really good scenes on the bus and things like that. And
it was, the way this show actually gives life to some of the victims and characters around Dahmer is. Did you hear my stomach then? The way this show gives life and character to people around Dahmer in the show is probably the most interesting aspect to me. And following on from this episode, on the next episode we'll go into that a little bit more.
So the probably one of the most disturbing things is the young neighbour. The young neighbour that was assaulted. So he was 13.
Yeah.
Jeffrey assaulted him, tried to drug him.
Yeah.
He managed to survive and run away.
Yeah.
Ran to his home, walking into his family.
Yeah.
Almost dying.
Almost overdosed, yeah.
And, just that whole thing was really harrowing for me. He was a minority, not listened to. The whole thing about the court scene. And
that judge,
the judge,
oh my God, yeah.
And it was just to see it from the father's perspective was really, really tough.
And why is that even more tough with something we've already seen in the show, the younger brother?
Well, that's it. So this is
same family,
the older brother of the victim that we saw in episode 1, was it?
Yeah, I think it was episode 1, yeah.
Of the young boy that ran out onto the street.
So the victim that's brought back, who's already been partially drilled into in his head, is brought back to Dahmer in the very first episode by the police. And this is a flashback in effect, isn't it? The current episode we're watching. And it's two brothers this family is just being devastated by Dahmer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
one sexually assaulted, never to forget that moment, and one killed.
Yeah, in a really horrific way.
Yeah.
Aided by the police.
Yeah. It was very interesting, though, to see his work. So he worked in the factory. Not a lot of dialogue in those moments, when you see the highlighted reel of Dad's flashbacks of suspicion and disbelief.
Yeah, I loved how they did that.
Very good, turning a blind eye to things. He felt guilty. He wanted, psychiatric help for his son. He wanted for the prison system to be a reforming system for him, so he would get some psychiatric help. I know from personal experience that the prison system is just so messed up.
Especially in the US now with sponsored and privately run prisons.
But it's like that here. You've got, private security guards in prisons and they just don't care.
Yeah.
The prisons are full of people with mental health issues and they are not addressed and not helped at all. Jeffrey went to prison for a year. Mm-hmm. But actually, was he at prison? Because he was allowed to work for 40 hours a week.
Yeah, that was insane.
He... At the end of the episode, you see him coming out, and he's like, "Oh, I was able to do weights, and I had." It seemed like he had a good time.
Yeah. He sounded like he enjoyed it. Yeah.
And then he comes out, and he's in his own place, and his dad's asking, "Did you have any help? Did you speak to anyone in there?" No. It's just ignored.
Yeah.
So that was the end of that episode.
We see the victim of the next episode at the very end of the last episode. And it's probably the most evocative, or I don't know how to describe it, disturbing. It's just completely disturbing, this episode. What's the title of this next one called?
So episode 6 is called Silenced. You're right, Alex. At the end of episode 5, we see Dahmer just bringing someone to his house.
Yeah, having coffee with him. And then...
it was a deaf black man.
Yeah.
Who was smiling, ready to walk into the house with him.
Yeah.
The episode 6, called Silenced, it starts in Milwaukee, 1960. At a birth, that's the scene.
The birth of a young black child to a family that quickly learn that the child, because of misused drugs in the mother's treatment, is deaf.
Yeah,
so it's about his family, and this is what the show is. This is the most interesting aspect of the show for me, is other characters within it, not Dahmer himself.
This whole episode, well, I would say 70% of it is not about Dahmer.
Yeah,
it's so well done
because Dahmer's already previously documented so much, so it doesn't need to all be about him.
No, but you really delve deep into this victim. It's really harrowing. So Tony Hughes is a child within a family, and seems like a really loving, warm family. He was, as a child, given gentamicin, which is an antibiotic, but it caused deafness. And then you skip forward, so he's deaf maybe around about 1, I think.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
You skip forward to him in a club, dancing,
having fun.
Silence.
Yeah, the way they demonstrate that on screen, through the lack of sound or the use of sound in a very intelligent way, because you do hear that he's deaf.
Well, it's an audio hum, isn't it? Yeah,
it's an audio hum, and it's brilliantly executed, I think.
Yeah, he feels the beat of the music.
Yeah.
Yeah, the depiction of deafness was great. That whole relationship that he had with his deaf friends, really highlighting the deaf community, the deaf gay community as well. It was really well shot, portrayed. He had a meal with his friends, and again, it was that deaf hum throughout the whole thing, because they were signing.
Exactly, yeah.
But you felt it was really engaging, watching them interact with each other.
Yeah, that was like a group of friends you wanted to be part of.
Yeah, and then you went straight into a meal with family.
Yeah.
And there was noise.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, because
But they were still signing.
They were still signing, but they reintroduced sound where there's characters that have hearing.
Yeah.
So it was very cleverly done.
It was, and it was really good to see the whole family sign.
That was really nice to see, and that's what makes it even more harrowing, disturbing, what this serial killer did to families through committing murder, and what happened to their extended family.
Well, I think that's it. I honestly think that's what this episode was a majority about. There was so much backstory for Tony. That's really what it was about. About him, and about how loved he was by his friends and his family. What I found really heartbreaking is watching how there could have been a saviour. What you felt as though Jeff was being saved by Tony. A load of story and development of the character, and then the interaction between the two, but you didn't actually know where in the timeline they met. Originally, as I was watching it, I was like, oh my god, like, he's moved to this city, because that's where you feel like you are at the end of episode 5. You go straight into episode 6 with Tony, and you're like, okay, he's moved into this place, he's met this guy, this could be the one that saves him. It was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking. You see a lot of, he's reformed, he's changed. Jeff is he's cleaned up his act, he's had a haircut, he's cleaned his place, he's got some fish. This is so good. His stepmom and his dad come over and really they talk about the fish, and they're like, pets keep you honest and out of trouble. That's what the dad said, which I thought was fantastic.
Dad got very emotional, didn't he?
Yeah, and then you go into the story a bit more, and then you realise you're in the bedroom and you see the barrel in the corner. I said to you, didn't I? I was like, there's a barrel there.
Yeah.
The barrel's there.
The barrel's already there.
It's there. This is not at the beginning.
No.
And then further on, he opens the top drawer of his bedroom chest. And further on, he opens the bedside table, the drawer, and you see all the photos.
Polaroids and the blood-stained hammer, the pre-blooded hammer, yeah.
And then you're like, oh my god, this is so far in.
Yeah.
He's mid-killing spree.
And they really pull on your heartstrings when you think he's managed to get away. And then the way they directed and edited this, they showed the mother reacting to her son missing, because we know through the earlier scenes in this episode that he would never miss a meal, he would never miss messaging his mother. So we already know, without showing it, what's happened to Tony.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's...
But it was also confusing because of the time. They do flip-flop,
They do flip-flop in terms of the time, and that can be a little bit, oh, okay. And is it in the previous episode or earlier in this episode, they show him going to prison, and then the army scene where he's.
Well, yeah.
So it can get a little bit confusing sometimes, this show.
But it does do a big reveal, though. Like, yes, when you start seeing, oh, they've gone back in time to the army. He's just come out of the army.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, Dad's actually reliving these moments. So there's a lot of like, oh, shit. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Those kind of moments, which, to be fair, I really enjoy.
No, when you realise what the show's doing and how well it executes, when you go, oh, what's going on here? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's brilliantly done.
It's brilliant, and I have watched a lot of like
serial killer shit.
Yes, I have, and I've worked in forensics. We know this. I've got a thick skin.
Yeah.
But boy, oh boy, I fell in love with Tony, and that
Tony's
was
the best.
So hard to feel.
I wouldn't be surprised. I've no way to quantify what I'm about to say. But I wouldn't be surprised that if he was like sculpted out of how his family talked about him, and Ryan Murphy got that information from Tony's family,
without a doubt,
because he was so clearly defined, the character or the victim. Brilliant. I don't know what the actor's name is, but just a fantastic performance.
Yeah.
And how the family dynamic was so character development and, dare I say it, fleshed out for a family dynamic in a show like this. They're small scenes, they're short scenes, but you really get to know the family very, very well.
You do. It felt so real.
So brilliantly performed and acted, and that's why it's my favourite episode. And it's my favourite episode because of performances, because of the writing, because of the directing, and because it's the most harrowing. Is that a reason to like it? But it's effective, isn't it?
It's very effective, and also like it does actually, for me, what was it, 91? It takes you back into that time.
Was that murder at 1991?
It was,
so yeah. It was the last year before he got caught.
It was, yeah.
Same year, yeah. Sorry, yeah,
same year. In Living Colour, they talk about all that, like the actual clothes that they're wearing. It's very. Yeah. It reminds me of my youth, I suppose, to some degree.
And that kind of club scene. A lot of people will remember that kind of scene and those places or those bathhouses and that kind of thing. And it's a real not love letter to the 80s and 90s, but it shows it off very well.
It does. It's done very well.
It feels very tangible, even though I wasn't of that age in the late 80s, 90s. I was much younger. It feels very. Real. Familiar.
Yeah, it's very realistic, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
I think, that scene with the police officer saying, well, you specifically chose that place to live because you know that it's a deprived area and the police don't go there. And he was like, and do you know what he said? It was just cheap. It's all I could afford. So he didn't even think that far into it. He just found these men attractive.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, it's so hard.
It got me, that one.
When we go back to Jeffrey's flat, and Tony's come back to get his keys, and the way he holds the note Dahmer, and then through scrunching up the paper, you know what's going to happen. He's still holding the hammer.
Well, you see him eat as well, don't you?
And you see him eat. I'm not sure if that's his meat, but that looked like a real piece of steak.
No, it was human flesh.
Yeah, it's and that's the blood that was on the bed. Yeah. I think that's the body. I think you said it whilst we were watching the episode. That's the body that's next to the bed still.
In the first episode.
When he's arrested later. So that body could be there 6 to 8 months lying on the floor.
We don't know. That's the thing about the timeline, isn't it?
We don't know. It could have been like the week after and then he got... Sorry, it could have been... Sorry, I step away from the mic sometimes. It could have been a week after where he gets arrested. We're not quite sure of those specifics. We need to see a bit more of a timeline to figure that out.
Yeah, it's pretty full on.
Yeah.
It's so sad.
It's full on, and I don't think we...
How stupid am I that... Sorry to interrupt you. How stupid am I that I thought that he found love?
I know, but that... You almost think that Jeffrey's going to turn it around or redeem himself, but there's no redeeming him. And we'll see that later on in, I guess, court case possibly. No, he's absolutely
not. But he was allowed to get away with it. The sexual assault of a minor, a 13-year-old, should not be given that kind of sentence with the comments of, I think it's just the alcohol.
Yeah.
And you can redeem yourself.
The way the system failed the victims and the survivors is very tangible in this episode, especially.
Feel sorry for Nan as well, like in these 2 episodes. Like, poor Nan. What was she supposed to do? Call the police on him?
I'm wondering whether the Nan, maybe we'll find this out, whether the grandmother's still alive when he's arrested and the crimes come out.
I doubt it. She's probably about an octogenarian in the 90s.
Yeah, that's true. Well, 91.
Let's Google it.
Let's Google it. I'll watch 2 more.
Oh, it's full on now.
Are we going to watch 2 more tonight?
Yeah, go on then.
Right, let's go.
Okay, wipe my tears away. To Tony.